Good afternoon and welcome. I'm John Levy. I'm privileged to serve as the 10th chair of the board of the Legal Services Corporation, and thank you all for coming today for this briefing on the importance of civil legal aid to American business. I especially want to thank the distinguished members of our panel. It's not on. Corporate counsel and officers of some of our nation's leading companies. They have traveled from across the country to be with us today. And they'll shortly be introduced by the panel's moderator, LSC's outstanding president, Jim Sandman. Today, we hear why civil legal aid matters to business. But for a moment, I would like to discuss the converse, why business matters to civil legal aid. And I'm not talking about some of the more obvious reasons, financial support, pro bono commitments, as important as they are. American businesses can play a crucial role for civil legal aid by just spreading the message about the crisis in the civil justice system that exists and help us get it out to the rest of the society. You see, unfortunately, that message has not been as understood as it ought to be. Stakeholders in the legal aid world convene conferences where people in the know talk to others in the know, in front of yet others in the know. And the lack of knowledge about the crisis became painfully apparent to me as I have visited with leaders of some of the nation's largest law firms. And many of them have no idea who LSC is. You know, it was founded many years ago, another time, another generation. And few fully, even though they're doing their own pro bono, they haven't put it all together, they don't fully appreciate the gravity of the challenge confronting us. So if the members of the legal community aren't aware of the major crisis, how can we expect people outside the profession to know? In my view, we have to quickly expand, and greatly so, those who understand and speak about the threat this crisis poses for our country's confidence in the orderly functioning of our civil justice system and the rule of law. And having paid little attention to the gravity of these issues for now a few generations, those of us here now, we have an obligation to those that succeed us to speak up and change the formula. We just can't kick this can down the road and put our democracy at risk. With the help of the people here today on our panel, we can help begin to have a larger and better understanding. Access to justice is a core American value, and remaining true to those values requires the engagement of everyone in our society. And that engagement can only be won, in my view, when the messengers are way beyond just the legal aid community and the legal profession. So help us take up the cause. And that brings me to our hosts, Congresswoman Susan Brooks, Congressman Joseph Kennedy, both of them, one a former U.S. attorney, the other a district attorney, lawyers, passionate about this issue. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for creating this important caucus and helping us reach many more who need to know about the crisis. Which one of you is speaking first? No, whichever one has the... Come on up, Joe. Susan.
I won the coin toss.
Good.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, as you probably see us, you see us walking in the halls all the time, reading our iPhones, and we always are overscheduled, and I apologize that this is one of those days that I too am overscheduled. But I want to thank all of you for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be here today. It's wonderful to be with you. I want to thank the panelists who I just met. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with staff and with people who are very interested and concerned about this topic. I've been an attorney attorney for 31 years. That's a long time as I think about it, not only in private practice for a number of years, but also involved in my local bar association, then as a U.S. attorney, then as a general counsel for my state's community college. And every job I've had, I know of the importance of legal representation for the indigent and ensuring. I've been in courtrooms where I have watched litigants trying to litigate their own case by themselves. I've been in the situation where judges rather would so much rather have a good lawyer as someone being across the aisle from them or across the courtroom from them. It is so important to our system of justice to have good lawyers representing people and ensuring that people have access to our democracy. That's what it's about. 60 million Americans, 1 in 5 these days, qualify for free civil legal aid. 1 in 5. That's an amazing statistic. And unfortunately, more than 50% of those seeking help are turned away because of the limited resources available. Civil legal aid helps them access those basic necessities, such as health care. I actually participated at home recently in a new and growing phenomenon called medical legal partnerships discussions. And legal services and other groups are helping lead those discussions about how we can assist people with medical needs with also their legal needs at the time that they are working in the healthcare system. Housing issues, government benefits, employment, education services. Many of you may not realize that members of Congress have constituent services, caseworkers, but we have to remind these people when they come, our constituents, we're not their lawyers. We're there to make inquiries of the federal agencies they might be battling with, but they so often need legal help. And so we refer them to legal services or to other organizations to try to help them because there's only so much that we can do. We know that a New York task force study found that every dollar invested in civil legal aid delivers $6 in return to the state's economy because it's resolving problems. So government actually will save money, which means we as taxpayers save money if we can help people resolve these issues in court in the best means possible, and that means having a lawyer. And so closing this justice gap and securing necessary access to civil legal assistance is so important. I'm very proud to have co-founded this Civil Legal Aid Caucus at the urgence, quite frankly, of Congressman Joe Kennedy. Congressman Kennedy and I came into Congress together. We found that we had quite a few interests in common. Both come from manufacturing states. Sadly, now we find that both of our states are battling in a significant way the opioid pandemic across the country, and in fact we're co-sponsoring a bill that's being marked up yet this afternoon. And so it does take bipartisan efforts like this to get the attention of our colleagues. We hope to get more of our colleagues to join this important caucus. I want to thank all of you for coming out today to learning more about what role Congress has to play in trying to make sure that more and more litigants, more and more people have access to legal services. I'm very proud of the legal profession. Who would guess that now it's easier to say I'm a lawyer than say I'm a member of Congress. So when I'm talking to people. But I will tell you that I'm very pleased that so many of you, and I also want, for those of you who are not lawyers, who are young staffers who are here, and who might be contemplating, and a lot of times young staffers have the notion, should I go to law school? Should I consider it at some point in my career? And I will say yes, because the fine work that you do here can be expanded back at home in your own communities, helping the types of constituents and people who need your services. There are lots of incredible ways to give back outside of Capitol Hill, and becoming a lawyer, so for those young staffers who are contemplating it, I encourage you to give it more thought. So thank you all for your attention to this. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to expanding the caucus and its work. Thank you, legal services.
Seats up here. The front row is this for a reason. People can sit. And there's seats over here.
That means leaving the food. That's the problem. So a big shout out first off to LSC Government Affairs folks that not only in LSC that put together an incredible panel of some of the top lawyers in the country, but also knew that the best way to get a good turnout on the Hill is to offer lunch. So well done. John, thank you. Thank you for the leadership that you've shown as leading the way on the board of LSC. Your family's deep respect for the law and what that means for this country and for individuals, I think speaks very highly as to the mission, obviously, of Legal Services Corporation, but truly about the promise and profession of the law, ensuring that as somebody whose father served in the Justice Department, led the Justice Department, understands that the law is supposed to apply evenly and equitably to everybody. So really honored, and then thank you for all that you've done over the course of the past couple of days, all that you've done this past year. You staff members in the room will appreciate. You guys are some of the most energetic, dedicated people you can ever find. I've got Eric Finns that I have tried to wear down over the past 3 years. He's still standing. He is run ragged by John Levi over the last 3 days. It has been amazing, John, so thank you. To the panelists that have come literally from all over the country, so honored that you'd be willing to be here on this. Eager to hear your comments. This has been an issue and a topic that's been important to me for a while, since I was running around as a legal aid volunteer in law school and then as a prosecutor in our district courts. And the hardest cases I tried weren't against a really good attorney, they were against a really bad one. And in housing court in Boston, seeing the difference in an outcome of a case just because somebody was represented by counsel or not. Massachusetts, Boston Housing Court, 2/3 of the folks that are represented by counsel keep their homes. 2/3 of the folks that are not lose it, just because you got somebody that can navigate their way through the system. So I know why this is so important to me, and I've seen it. I think I've got an appreciation as to why this is important for our country, particularly coming out of the halls of Congress, where we write and we fight about every little word in every little bill, and then give hardly any consideration as to how those protections and rights are actually applied, and whether they apply the same to you as they do to me, and whether I can avail myself of those protections the same way you can, or if they're in fact completely desperately impacting various aspects of our country and people in our communities. What I am thrilled, though, is that LSC and our panelists here are willing to talk about why this is important to business and what this means for our business community, particularly as we have up here global corporations, corporations that operate also in every corner of our country, and can talk about, I think, how the law applies and what the rule of law means when it is evenly applied in communities and when it is not. And what this means for your employees as folks that you look out for and make sure that that they have the ability to protect themselves, to protect their families, and have access to a justice system to seek redress when in fact they've been harmed. And to have the representation we have up here speaks volumes about and the institutions you represent and the importance of this as an issue that I think Congress needs to focus on, and clearly has gotten a fantastic resonance from across Capitol Hill. So grateful that you're here. Thank you for including me. John and Jim, honored to be your partner. Let us know what I can do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Kennedy and Congresswoman Brooks. I'm Jim Sandman. I'm president of the Legal Services Corporation. I'll briefly introduce our panelists. To my far right is Kate Adams, who is Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Honeywell. To my immediate right is Judge Sven Holmes, Vice Chairman and Chief Legal Officer of KMPG. He served as a federal district judge for many years. Bob Millen is to my left. He's Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel of Pizza Hut. And to his left is Laura Stein, Executive Vice President and General Counsel of the Clorox Company. I'd like to briefly set the stage before I begin the discussion among our panel and tell you something about what the Legal Services Corporation is, what civil legal aid is, and what the current state of access to civil justice for low-income people in the United States is. The Legal Services Corporation was established by an act of Congress in 1974 It is today the country's single largest funder of civil legal aid for low-income people. We provide funding to 134 independent legal aid programs, serving every county in every state and the territories as well. No matter where you are in the United States, there's an LSC-funded legal aid program providing legal assistance to low-income people. Civil legal aid provides legal assistance in the civil justice system for people who cannot afford a lawyer. Most Americans do not realize that you have no right to a lawyer in a civil case. You can lose your home. You can have your children taken away from you. You can be a victim of domestic violence in need of a civil protection order, and you have no right to a lawyer. The constitutional right to counsel applies only in criminal cases. The need for assistance in civil legal cases today is huge. As Congresswoman Brooks mentioned, 20% of the American population is today financially eligible for civil legal aid at an LSC-funded program. The standard is 125% of the federal poverty guideline. What that means is that if you make more than $15,000 as an individual or more than $30,000 as a family of four, you're not qualified. But the number of people who are, 60 million people, 20% of the American population. The resources available aren't nearly sufficient to meet the demand. So the state of civil legal justice in the United States today is desperate. A recent study in Massachusetts by the Boston Bar Association showed that of the people who showed up seeking help at a legal aid organization in Massachusetts, 64% were turned away with no help at all. The result is that across courts in our country, huge numbers of people show up without a lawyer. It is common in eviction cases for 95% or more of tenants to have no lawyer, even though 95% or more of landlords do have a lawyer. It's common for 95% of parents in child support cases to have no lawyer, and 2/3 of homeowners in foreclosure cases to have no lawyer. Imagine that. We have a legal system that was created largely by lawyers for lawyers, constructed at every turn on the assumption that you have a lawyer. Everything from the rules of civil procedure to the rules of evidence were designed with lawyers in mind. So just try to picture yourself in court at risk of losing your children or needing a protection order against an abuser and trying to go it alone. That's what we're talking about. I'd like to start by asking all of our panelists the same question. Why are you here? It would not strike most people as obvious that the chief legal officers of name-brand American companies would care about civil legal aid for low-income people and about the state of access to justice in the United States today. Why do you care, and why does your business care? Kate, you want to start?
Yes. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate. I thank both Congresswoman Brooks and Congressman Kennedy for hosting this panel, and Jim for your remarks. And I think it's a legitimate question. Why would I be here as the General Counsel of Honeywell? But when John Levy, my former law partner, called and said, would you participate on this panel? My answer was an immediate yes. By way of a little background, I did work in the Bronx court system between college and law school and saw firsthand the challenges of one of the most difficult jurisdictions in the country. I was a Department of Justice lawyer for a number of years before going into private practice. But I'm actually here in my capacity as a representative of a Fortune 100 global industrial company. We have 130,000 employees all over the world. We make everything that goes on aircraft. We make all kinds of diversified materials, industrial controls, bulletproof materials for our soldiers, and many, many other things in the industrial space. And these issues are critical to the ongoing success of our business enterprise. One of the things that has made America such a foundational location for successful global business is its civil institutions. And every day we depend on those institutions to support our company. If we can't count on the rule of law, if we can't count on our government structures, to provide us with predictability, with a fair system and a system that the American population can also support, we run the risk of having our entire business enterprise compromised. And if you think about what's happening around the globe, and we can all think of some countries, and just recently Brazil, where we have a very large presence, is having significant social and political instability. And then you can think about many other places where many of us here do business. Those stand in stark contrast to what America stands for and to the institutions that we need to protect and cherish to make sure that our civil society and our economic environment continues to flourish as it has in the past. But you can see fraying around the edges in this election. You can feel the anxiety and the feeling that many people, particularly those who are not economically as well off as others, are not able to participate as fully in many aspects of our society, but in particular in our court systems. And I don't need to repeat the statistics, but clearly if you have 60 million people who are eligible for legal services funding, that's a very large number of people who are going to struggle to get appropriate representation. And there's a lot of fallout from that in terms of how our court system operates and how it affects companies. We're a regular litigant in pretty much every state in the country. At one time or another, we as a litigant are in the court either defending our rights or pursuing affirmative opportunities, and the state court systems are pretty much a mess. It takes forever to get things resolved. We wait and we get continuances, and part of the challenge, or a big part of the challenge, is we don't have the infrastructure, and in particular the legal support, the counsel support to move many of these cases through the system in an appropriate and equitable way. And so we directly feel that impact, and we also feel the impact on our jury pool. The jurors get frustrated, and I can understand that, and they react negatively to what they perceive as an unhealthy and inefficient and potentially unfair judicial system, and that can result in a skewing of outcomes to other players who are trying to achieve fair results in jury cases. I think fundamentally the court system kind of represents the best of what America stands for, but we're watching it get worse, not better. And we don't want to see our cherished institutions, our valued institutions, become mocked or not trusted, or fundamentally have a large group of people feel like they cannot have fair access to it, because it undermines the confidence in the overall governmental institutions that we all depend on to be able to do business effectively and to employ people. And one last point on this, I know we have most of the people who work at Honeywell can afford a lawyer, but that doesn't mean they're not participants in this court system. And when they are on leave because they're dealing with issues that are dragging on in the court system, they're not working. And that the ripple effect, which was mentioned earlier, is very profound. We see the effect of somebody not being able to come to the office, and then somebody else has to do that work, or someone else has to work that line in the factory, and it has a real economic impact, and the cumulative impact, the individual impact may be small, but the cumulative impact is very significant. So those are a few of our thoughts on this, and I really commend you for bringing us together so we can participate in this dialogue.
Thank you, Kate. So business has a very important interest in the stability of civil institutions, and particularly in the stability of an institution as central to our society as the justice system is. Also, as you heard, when the court systems are not functioning efficiently because large numbers of people are not represented in trying to navigate this unfamiliar system alone, it clogs things up. It slows cases down for people who do have counsel. It's inefficient, and that inefficiency is manifested in any number of ways. The slow pace at which cases move through the court system, but the imposition on people who have to appear in court, whether as litigants or as jurors. So thank you for the very clear explanation. Sven, can you give us your perspective?
Sure. I think a couple of things really that really, to me, are of vital importance. First of all, I would like to thank Congresswoman Brooks and also Congressman Kennedy for all of their work in this regard, and it's a real opportunity, and I appreciate being asked by John to participate in this panel to talk about this topic, which is a matter of very keen importance. I did have, before I was on the federal bench for 10 years, I was also a partner here in Washington, D.C. at Williams & Connolly, and I've spent a lot of time dealing with these issues, both in those areas as well as a member of the Equal Justice Works Board of Directors. So a couple of perspectives on this coming out of those experiences. I think from a business standpoint, it's important to step back and ask yourselves, what is it that are the predominant things that the civil justice system is addressing on behalf of people? And those really, the primary things, the first four most important things deal with bankruptcy, with benefits, with domestic relations, and with housing. When you think about a workforce that is facing into a number of challenges in their home life, they're trying to make sure that they have adequate benefits, health benefits, benefits that will be for their children, housing, trying to make sure that if they have domestic relations issues or bankruptcy or financial issues, you can see that the disruption, the distraction, the problems that it creates to be dealing with those issues, and to be dealing with those issues without any support, without any help, with all the time invested in it, with the complexities invested in it, then all of those things go directly to a business concern, which should be a concern that all of us share, and that is that those disruptions are taken out of the workplace, that those things are being handled and dealt with, and that these people are being able to address those home problems without the kind of impact that it has on their workday, on their lives, on their ability to be strong and contributing members of society and of the economy. So business had a very real interest in making sure that those issues are being addressed adequately. The second thing coming out of my time as a judicial officer really does have to do with the fair administration of justice. One of the things that's a most powerful reality of our system is that good lawyers beat bad lawyers. It really makes a difference, the quality, the energy, the insights, the experience that you have as a lawyer. Now, multiply that by 100-fold, good lawyers or bad lawyers beating no lawyers at all. We are a rule of law, but the rule of law has with it sets of rules. Those are the fundamental cornerstone and guiding principles of making our system effective. But people unable to navigate those rules, unable to actually access the rule of law because they don't have the capacity to utilize the rules that would demonstrate what their case was really about and reach the substantive concerns about that case, that a failure of accessing rules in itself is a failure to access the rule of law. So the administration of justice and the fair administration of justice is absolutely dependent upon the ability to operate through the system, to make it work, to make your case and the facts of your case known, and then to permit it to be decided on the facts of the case, not decided because of an inability to actually navigate through the system. So those are the two things I'd leave you all with.
Thank you, Sen. It's very useful to have the perspective not only of a corporate general counsel, but of a former federal trial judge. Bob, what is your perspective on these issues?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, particularly John Levy, Jim, and Congresswoman Brooks and Congressman Kennedy. It's an honor to be here with the panel to talk about this important issue. When I originally got sent a preview of the questions, I have to say that it was a daunting task. It was tie in the effective access to justice to your business. And I was thinking, okay, how can I tie in access justice with the delivery of a hot, savory pizza to your doorstep on time. The more I thought about it, and I think that's what John wanted me to do, was to think about it a little bit more as a corporate representative, the more that I wanted to take the challenge, and maybe I can even meet it in less than 30 minutes. What I can tell you is, without delivering a civics lesson, traveling all the way from Dallas here to the Capitol building, it's not exactly the appropriate thing to do, is that Pizza does believe what you've heard consistently from other representatives, and that is that our business, like many businesses, relies on a society that is predictable and that is stable. And access to justice and the promise to access to justice plays an important part in that. And to the extent that the promise of access to justice is growing far too great a distance from the actual provision of access to justice, it creates problems. Those problems show up in the headlines, and they show up in our business. And they wear on the belief in the rule of law, and they begin to tear at the fabric of society in a way that disrupts what we rely on at Pizza Hut, and that is predictability and stability. That's as a general matter. I can also talk about personally at Pizza Hut and our family. We're a big corporation. We're a microcosm of society in many ways. We have, not to try to match numbers of employees here, but we have 150,000. We have 150,000 employees who are operating in the U.S. under the Pizza Hut brand. Our sister brands, Taco Bell and KFC, add another more than 350,000. So the total is almost 500,000 individuals that are operating under our brands in the U.S. And it's an extremely robust group. It's diverse, and I can guarantee you that it is representative of society. And in that sense, the challenge that we have, given that we have as our business model, it's no secret, a very competitive cost structure, is what can we do for our employees, particularly employees who are really the principal point of contact with our customers. And they are the salvation of our brand, transaction by transaction. And that is, we can provide support for them, we can respect them, we can respect them in ways that go beyond just simply words, but into deeds. And that really is the link, in my mind, between what we try to do day in and day out as we're looking as managers of the business for what we can do to support our employees, our team members, out in the front lines of the restaurants. And that is, we can look at those things that support them, both at the workplace and in their lives. And one of those is, of course, Legal Services Corporation. And it's an essential item, particularly for a group like ours, as you know, that doesn't occupy the highest levels of the economic social strata. And they need help. There are situations where, virtually on a daily basis, if we have a team member who is running into a situation where access to justice is either denied or is not available or is delayed, it's disruptive. It's disruptive in obvious ways, that is, to the individual. It's also disruptive to the other team members in the restaurant. It's disruptive to the culture that we work very hard to try to maintain at the company, and that is, we're there for you. But we're not there for you in a lot of circumstances that fall under this issue of access to justice. We have to be honest with ourselves. It's a gap, and it's a growing gap. It's one that we need to address. I'm happy that John has brought it into sharp focus for me and for our company. We like to believe that we're doing an awful lot, but we, Legal Services Corporation and others, need to work even harder at narrowing the gap between the promise and reality. And I'm happy to be here to talk about that.
Thank you, Bob. I'm hearing some themes emerge from all of the comments here. Business cares about the stability of civil institutions They care about public confidence in civil institutions. And they care about the effect on their employees when the justice system is not well-functioning, efficient, and accessible to people. Laura?
Thanks, Jim, and thanks so much to Congresswoman Brooks and Congressman Kennedy and to John and Jim and all of you for inviting us to be here. The work that is being done by Legal Services Corporation to help address the desperate need by so many less advantaged members of our society economically to meet their daily needs is just tremendous work that you do. It's much appreciated. The question about either why business or why I personally care so much about access to justice being equal access and equal justice, it has some parts that are very rational, and then it has some parts that just speak from the heart as the right thing to do as a caring member of our society. So, from a rational standpoint, Jim, you talked about some of the reasons why, businesses care that we have social cohesion and greater social stability, because with that comes greater economic well-being for everyone. There's a correlation when there's social justice and social stability that the economy does better. And then when companies and businesses are involved in access to justice issues, it's part of our corporate responsibility programs, and it can help build trust. Generally, because when we're out there in the community as a citizen doing good work, hopefully that instills trust in our businesses. And then we also can influence others. So we can influence others to provide civil legal aid because of the nature of what we do. We can encourage other businesses to get involved because the need is so great. And we can encourage law firms and others to do more. And other reasons that make sense for us to do civil legal aid is from large legal departments like we have. It builds the capabilities and leadership of our lawyers doing work, especially in areas that might not be their typical practice. They become better lawyers. So there are so many reasons why, from a business case standpoint, it makes sense to support equal access to equal justice. But from a personal standpoint, also, both personally and looking at my legal team, so many of us went to law school because of the higher calling of the work we can do to make our society better, more fair, more transparent, and make a difference in the impact of individual lives that might need a little help now and again. And so and then from all our employees, when they get involved in the community, it makes it a more engaging, better place to work. I think Bob talked about the culture, the smell of the place. It just feels better. And so I started out with a law firm that's very committed to civil legal aid. And it's just been part of how I was raised as an obligation to give back. Personally, I've done a lot in the domestic violence area. For many years, I was the chair of the American Bar Association Commission on Domestic Violence. And one of the parts of our pro bono program at Clorox involves having Clorox lawyers be in court providing assistance to survivors of domestic violence, stalking, and other violence. And the need is so great. We've heard the statistics that it's 30% of the Legal Services Corporation's cases now. It's filling our courts, and it's in just about every family in the U.S. And so when you work individually with domestic violence survivors or tenants who need to keep a place to live, or folks who are trying to re-enter and clean up their criminal records. All of those personal, individual interactions making a difference in individuals' lives just feels good and reminds all of us who do that work and all of us in our companies who do that work and are out in the community, why it's so important that we all need to contribute and give back.
Thank you, Laura, for emphasizing the importance of pro bono work. That makes the point I'd like to follow up on. The Legal Services Corporation is a great example of a public-private partnership. It's hardly as if the legal aid programs that we fund are entirely dependent on the annual appropriation we get from Congress. Last year, on average, the legal aid organizations we support got only about 38% of their funding from the Legal Services Corporation. They leverage the federal dollar with private contributions and with the pro bono work of the private bar, not only those in law firms, but those in corporate legal departments. They're putting their time where their convictions are. That's a powerful statement that they really mean what you're hearing the leaders of these corporate legal departments say here today. Kate, can you tell us something about the pro bono work that you and your colleagues do at Honeywell?
Yes, first of all, I want to recognize Laura's incredible leadership and contribution on domestic violence issues. She's been a leader in this area for a long time and very much appreciated and admired. We have a significant pro bono set of activities and commitments, and we have an ethical obligation as members of the bar to participate in pro bono, and our lawyers love doing it. It's something that they're very passionate about. The whole legal department's about 1,000 people, and the lawyers and many of the paralegals actively do different kinds of pro bono. Some examples, what we try to do is work in areas where we actually have the capabilities to do the work most effectively. So we're part of the Pro Bono Partnership. That work is typically for nonprofit organizations that need help with their corporate paperwork, their taxes, that sort of thing. We have a large defense business, and we work with the William and Mary Veterans Clinic to support veterans seeking benefits, health care, and the like. And that's been a wonderful partnership with William and Mary, and we're very proud of that. And we also have a significant commitment to diversity in the bar, and we've partnered with a number of organizations. LCLD, Leadership Council for Legal Diversity, is one of our primary partners. But let me make a point and provide some support for LSC in this context. We do what we can as a corporate institution, but we are not the government. We are a business, and we don't have the infrastructure to do for the population that needs legal support everything that they need. We're truly a tiny drop in the bucket of need. We really can't, we don't have a litigation capability, so we can't go into court and litigate unless we partner with a law firm. There are a lot of constraints to what we're capable of doing for this population. And that's why it's so important that everybody here recognizes we still need the federal government and the state governments to take the lead here. We're your partners. We want to do what we can, but there's just an enormous amount of capability required that I think just not literally possible for American business to provide, and we can't do it as well as the people that are trained to do this properly. So I just make the pitch. We're here, but we still need your support to make sure that LSC and its sister organizations continue to be able to provide these services.
Thank you for the plug, Kate. It's important to recognize that pro bono lawyers are volunteers, and any of you who've ever volunteered know how hard it can be to manage volunteers. You may have volunteered with an organization that doesn't do a good job of managing its volunteers, and you feel as if your commitment is being wasted. So pro bono volunteers need the support of well-funded, full-time pro bono or legal services organizations to be able to put their efforts to good use, to find the cases for them, to train them, to mentor them, and to follow up. That both elements are important. You can hardly do it all, never will be able to do it all with volunteers. Bob, can you talk about pro bono activities at Pizza Hut?
Sure. Excuse me, I'd be glad to. I think I won the I won the employee battle at 500,000, but I lost the number of attorneys battle rather decisively. I'm envious. But I would repeat an important point, and that is our heart is in the right place, and we're trying. But our primary business is not the provision of legal services. So we do what we can, and I like to believe that we hire, we attract, and we hire and retrain and retain individuals who have a commitment to pro bono work, particularly obviously in the legal department. And we have also partnerships with local organizations that need pro bono services to accomplish their mission. One example in Dallas is a very good organization called the Family Place that provides refuge, a place to live for abused spouses and their children. We provide funding, we provide direct service by way of membership on the board, and we also provide counsel for how women in need of access to justice can obtain that. And that's an important part of our mission at the corporate headquarters, is a relationship like that. We also work with the homeless societies and provided similar services and some other organizations. I think on the personal side is what I mentioned, the type of individuals that we'd like to be able to attract are those who are what we call smart and with heart. It's an expression that we use, and we mean it. And the heart part, as Laura was explaining, is, are you doing the right thing? And are we supporting you in doing the right thing? And the answer to that is, in a couple of examples, one of our lawyers is handling a very important matter for the human rights organization that has to do with a person who has been subject to horrible abuse, and she's invested literally weeks in that matter, and we applaud her work in that, and we support it. We have other lawyers who are working on other matters that are, I guess, what I would call more garden variety, civil matters, and we support that also. Probably the most important thing that we can do for impact is that we hire a lot of legal services, meaning we have relationships with firms like Sidley and Austin and others. And their primary business is the provision of legal services. We expect them to do great work for us. We pay for that. But we also ask what work they do on a pro bono basis, and it matters. We bring it up, and we let them know that it matters. And that's an important augment to, I think, what we need out there, and that is not just Legal Services Corporation, but those who are in the best position to provide the help that is needed to do so and to maintain that commitment.
That last is a very important point. Corporate legal departments throughout the United States have been very effective in making it known to the law firms that they hire that they expect them to do pro bono work, and it's increasingly something that they inquire about and measure. It's a measure of law firms' good citizenship that they do pro bono work, and there are many partnerships between corporate legal departments and the law firms that they work with together to do pro bono work. Sven, I want to follow up on something you said earlier from your perspective as a former federal judge. You talked about how good lawyers beat bad lawyers and lawyers beat people who don't have lawyers. But can you say a little more about what it's like to be on the bench in a trial court and have someone who doesn't have a lawyer appear before
you? As I said, I mean, the bigger problem with people that don't have lawyers is that their ability to navigate through the system at all. So how much of that depends on the judicial officer, to the extent possible, to see if you can get to the point where the substance of the case can actually be presented. And without having any legal guidance to manage your way through the set of rules, your ability to actually get to that point of presenting the substance of your case is enormously impeded. So I think that's a very serious interference with the ability to actually put on a case. I did want to mention one thing that came up with Congresswoman Brooks when she was talking about constituent services, because I know, and having been on the staff up here on Capitol Hill some years back, I know how important constituent services could be. I know how you all in this room focus on that, make sure that you communicate between people's needs and the government. And I think one way to think about that is how many times have you been frustrated in dealing with constituent services to recognize that programs that the members of Congress and the executive branch have agreed are absolutely necessary for the welfare and benefit of citizens, that those benefits are actually not being delivered. And the very idea, and this is something that the Legal Services Corporation Task Force on Pro Bono spent a lot of time focusing on, but the very idea is that Congress spent a great deal of time identifying need, identifying the people who needed the services, and yet the very idea that one of the biggest areas that are in need of legal representation is legal representation to actually get the benefits that Congress intended for you to have as part of what they thought would be an ordered and better society. And so I think that that connection that Congresswoman Brooks made is an important point, that it connects the constituent services with the legal aid, and as long as it is required to have legal representation to get those very benefits, then it is absolutely incumbent upon all of us who believed that that was good policy, that that was better for our society as policy, and yet at the same time, if we don't do all that we can to make sure that at the end of the day those services and benefits are delivered, I think that's a critical aspect of this.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you particularly for emphasizing the constituent service aspect of legal aid. Every congressional district has an LSC-funded legal aid program serving constituents. And I hope you get the word out to your district offices that there's help available at a legal aid office when they get calls that involve legal issues that they may not be capable of dealing with. We try to encourage our grantees to establish good relationships with local district offices so that the district office knows what they're available and what their capabilities are. All of our panelists today have spoken in one way or another about values. They may not have used that word, but that's what they're talking about. They're talking about fundamental American values, who we are as a country and what we hold ourselves out to the world to be, about the importance of fairness and confidence in our justice system. So although you might have been surprised initially to hear these representatives of corporate America come here to talk about these issues, the lesson I take is that they're Americans first and business people second, and they care about the same things that every other American cares about. This is a nonpartisan issue, it's a bipartisan issue, and it's important to maintain the most fundamental American values. Please join me in welcoming our